U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the Administration of Children and Families, where I lead the communication and outreach for the Office of Early Childhood Development. Welcome to the 8th Annual EdGames Expo, a week-long showcase of game-changing education technology innovations that were developed with the support of programs at ED and across the federal government. As part of this year's Expo, a group of the country's leading education technology developers have produced a series of 20-minute masterclass for educator videos. Each will present models for examples for how to implement technology-based interventions in a classroom or remote setting. Assessment in early childhood classrooms is vital to ensure that children receive the right intervention and curricular support at the right time. Yet assessment is one of the most time-consuming and challenging tasks for teachers. Ideally, an EdTech tool would be able to make data collection objective, efficient, and actionable. Today's masterclass features a hybrid game and observation-based intervention called Cognitive Toybox, created by New York City-based company Cognitive Toybox, with support from the Department of Education, the National Science Foundation, and a select group of EdTech accelerators. After the masterclass, stay tuned for an engaging Q&A hosted by me with Cognitive Toybox and a group of early childhood educators, coaches, and administrators. Now, off to Tammy Kwan in New York City for the masterclass.
I'm Tammy Kwan, co-founder and CEO of Cognitive Toybox. We are an early childhood platform for kindergarten readiness. I started this organization in 2015, and it was spun out of my graduate school research from NYU, where I was focused on understanding how technology and research could better support early childhood educators in the field. In my work with the Head Start program in Brooklyn, I saw firsthand the challenges around early childhood assessment. Assessment today is done largely through an observation-based approach, where teachers spend 4 to 6 hours per week observing children, taking notes on their development, and then after class, transcribing those notes into a digital record-keeping system. This process is onerous for teachers, and the data collected is often subjective and not actionable, since program administrators are reviewing it just 3 times per year. But if teachers are collecting this data on a weekly basis, it really is a missed opportunity if they can't then use the data to inform instruction. Our team of researchers, game developers, and educators thought that there had to be a better way, and we were fortunate to receive grant funding to develop one. So what did we build? Games, assessment games. Let me show you more. Cognitive Toybox is the first hybrid assessment system that combines both observation-based and game-based assessment into a single platform. Students play game-based assessments for 3 to 5 minutes per week, sitting one-to-one with early childhood teachers. Games are made up of 2 components: the student-led section, where students work mostly independently, answering questions using a touchscreen tablet, and then the teacher-led section, which gives teachers questions to ask aloud to students alongside digital manipulatives for students to use to answer the question. By combining these 2 sections, teachers get a report that describes both the expressive and receptive skills for each student. Importantly, Cognitive Toybox offers games across the different developmental domains, including social and emotional development, fine motor development, cognition, and language and literacy. Now here's a peek into some of our games. Find the matching shape. Find the matching shape. Which fish comes next? Which turtle goes on top? Who is frustrated? Who is happy? Which one is larger? Which bag has more?
Copy this shape. Copy this line.
Which two words rhyme? Cat, hat, or cat, socks? Which two words rhyme? Wag, rag, or wag, mat?
Now let's take a look at our observation-based assessment tools. In addition to games, teachers can quickly and easily collect observations. Using the Cognitive Toybox platform, they can type up anecdotes or take photos to include in their observations as supporting documentation. These observations are automatically pipelined into the same reporting system as the game-based assessments. These reports collect critical information about student knowledge and growth that the teachers and administrators can then use in real time to individualize and improve instruction. Today, I'm excited to show you what Cognitive Toybox looks like in practice. Due to restrictions around COVID-19, we weren't able to do an actual recording of a classroom. But what we will show you is what it looks like when children are engaging with Cognitive Toybox. And then you're going to hear from a real-life teacher, coach, and an administrator as they walk through their Cognitive Toybox dashboard and share with you their insights and how they use it to adjust instruction as well as continuous quality improvement on a weekly, monthly, and ongoing basis.
With Los Angeles Unified School District operating virtually, Sarah Vasquez, the principal at Canoga Park Early Education Center, realized that she and her team would need to adapt in order to support children's learning and development during this challenging year. In the fall 2020, Principal Vasquez rolled out Cognitive Toybox to all the teachers at Canoga Park. Through the weekly instructional staff meetings, Vasquez cultivated a community of practice in which teachers and instructional staff collectively learned how to adapt to remote learning.
During these weekly meetings, the two lead teachers who had been piloting Cognitive Toybox over the summer shared their experiences with the new teachers. Ms. Douglas shared that she was initially hesitant about learning a new tool. However, she now sees the benefits of Cognitive Toybox in helping her plan for her lessons and inform her teaching practice. She said, "After reviewing the reports, I realized that my students didn't necessarily need help with counting 1 to 10, but more specifically with number correspondence. So I had the children shape Play-Doh into numbers or use other common objects at home like cotton balls to form numbers."
Here you go, Chloe. Which book is that? Nice job. Oh, one more. I wonder what that's going to be.
A triangle.
A triangle. Good. Let's copy it. High five. Awesome.
I'm teaching for probably 30 years now. So I've been teaching early ed for most of my career. Last year was the first year with Toybox. We had the app, and we basically had the kids play the games with me one-on-one throughout the day. Maybe, during playtime, outside time, all during the day. I pull the child aside and play with them 5 minutes. And then I would use the observation to observe the child and take notes and so forth. I did portfolios a lot. I did a lot of pictures. I like the portfolio a lot for the observation.
Yeah, that's helpful. And can you talk about how you're implementing Cognitive Toybox this year with COVID?
Most of my parents are online and have an account. And some of them, maybe most of them, do go on and play the games. And then we see the results on the portal. And I use the results to put the children maybe in groups and so forth for small groups. So we do use it to help us to separate the children out according to their abilities. And I use it a lot during, let's say, Zoom sessions. I'll take notes during Zoom sessions So if I go to the report section and go to objective report, then I can choose, let's say we're working on number sense. I can see down here, the portal or the app will tell me which children are doing well, and maybe put them in small groups like this, so I can use this information along with what I already know about the children to put them in groups, separate them into breakout rooms during Zoom sessions, and maybe these children maybe give them more help with their work and so forth, and these kids maybe challenge them a little bit more. I think it's great. It helps us a lot with this, with the grouping. And also a child like this, Phoebe, who is higher, I can give her even more challenging work to guarantee her to go on and learn more. Patterning is hard for us online because, as everything else is, we can't really be with the children, and it's hard for us to explain things to them. So I think this helps a lot to have the children play the games with this kind of thing, because they can see more clearly through the game playing what we're asking them to do. This helps me a lot to really dig deep into each domain, and I can see where Alejandro is doing well and where maybe I need to think of other ways to present my lessons to challenge him more.
Hi, my name is Anusha Subramaniam, and I'm the Evaluation and Quality Director at an agency in Chelsea, Manhattan. We are a community-based organization that has a preschool program. We serve Head Start as well as Early Learn Universal Pre-K funded students. We recently purchased Cognitive Toybox in October of last year and have just had huge benefits from using it in remote instruction as well as our in-person instruction. We currently have a hybrid model where half of our students are remote and half of our students are learning in person. And we definitely plan to continue using this tool after, everything is resolved and we're able to all be back in person. We purchased the tool in October and we started to train teachers. It was very easy because there's a training module already in the system. So we were able to ask teachers to do it on their own, given in a self-paced manner. And then we were also able to see their progress on the administrative end. The teachers have tablets in their classrooms for in-person use, where they're able to do the games with the students. And the students really are engaged when they do the games. It's a great way to have a standardized and also fun way to assess the students. And what's been great about using it during this time is our remote students, we gave their parents access to the games, so we can still collect assessment data on the remote learners' progress. So our process so far, once the teachers were trained, is that we worked closely with the Cognitive Toybox staff to create our checkpoint schedule so that we can make sure that we sequence the assessment objectives the way we'd like our teachers to do it and in a manageable way. So we were able to just target a couple objectives initially, and then now we're doing multiple objectives a week now that our teachers are used to the system. What we did initially was just our first goal was just getting the teachers used to it. Our second goal was starting to hold them accountable for how often they used it and were they actually hitting the scheduled or targeted assessments every week. We do the weekly checkpoint usage schedule to see what percentage of the scheduled assessments each class has completed so far. So we usually do this at the end of the day on Friday so we can give teachers some feedback over the weekend to touch base on Monday about what they may need to catch up on. Broader level, I look at the checkpoint to start to now feature. Now we're actually towards the end of a checkpoint right now. This lets me know which classrooms are nearing completion of the checkpoint. So for example, the green room and the purple room have been very effective in getting a lot of their assessments done, whereas some of the rooms are not as close. So this is our third objective at this point. We've done the training, we've done the accountability piece. Now we're on, using the data in real time to inform your instructions. We are doing a professional development on using the objective report in a weekly or bi-weekly manner, where we're teaching them to go into their classroom level data and sorting by average level to see for the different objectives what the average level of performance is for the students. And so this is a really quick way because in my opinion, it's always easier to plan at the class-wide level rather than at the individual student level when you have a classroom of 18 kids. So I usually suggest to teachers, look at the average level, look at the ones that have the lowest level, and pick one of those that you think would be valuable to do more focused instruction on. So you can click on one of those and you can see all the different sub-objectives, and then at the bottom it gives you the recommended small groups. So this is a really easy way for where teachers don't really have to do much analysis on their end. It literally hands to them, these are your small groups, these are their levels, and these are the behaviors you can do to get them to the next level. So another really helpful feature of what we're using Cognitive Toybox for is our remote learners. Right now we have about half of our students in remote learning. And so what they do is they have 3 20-minute live sessions in the day with the teacher. The teacher plans, does a morning meeting with them, a literacy session with a read aloud, and then a math or science section. So, and then the teacher provides a lot of additional activities for the parents to do that are intentionally connected to the content and the study unit so that the parents can keep the student engaged for about the same amount of time that the student would be engaged if they were in our in-person settings. With Cognitive Toybox, we're able to actually see the family engagement report, which is really useful for our remote classroom teachers, to see which students are actually completing the games at home. The teachers have worked really hard to encourage parents to go in and look at the games, whether it's on the tablet or even looking at the parent report on the portal. So first, we'll take a look at the games. So you can see here, we have one student in this classroom who's actually completed 7 games. So when we look at this particular student's data, we'll know that they've actually completed a lot more assessment than some of the other students in this room. And then the other piece that's really useful for our remote teachers and parents to connect is the parent report. The parent report is something that the parents receive on a daily basis. They can access it in the portal, and it allows them to see one area of success, one area of growth, and some suggested activities. So this is an example, and it's available in English and Spanish, which is useful because we have a good number of Spanish-speaking parents. They can see the actual goal. There's a recommended activity. There's a class activity, there's a read aloud. So in addition to all the resources that our teachers are giving the parents, they also have these streamlined kind of activities that they can click on. We actually received a comment recently from a parent who said that they have a student who has speech delays, who is in remote learning. And by having access to these games, even though the child isn't getting as much speech services as they normally would like, they still see that the student's engaged and making progress. So that was really great. All in all, Cognitive Toybox has really been a tool for us to train our teachers to do more standardized assessments. The scheduled observations and games really help keep the teachers on track and making sure they actually get to all of the assessments throughout the checkpoint, so we have enough data to really use. And the real-time data reports allow the teachers to plan at the individual, small group, or even whole group level. So we're really excited about it. The teachers have been giving us great feedback, and we're excited to continue using this to keep improving our student progress.
Hi, it's my pleasure today to share some feedback with you regarding Cognitive Toybox's assessment product. I have formerly worked with a very large district in early childhood education. The organization that I worked with had coaches that provided feedback and support to the educators of kids that were primarily 4 to 5 years old using this product. I can tell you that it was incredibly productive for coaches to be able to access the data points that were generated automatically for the educators in giving them feedback on suggested ways they might be able to approach different tactics in trying to elevate the learning outcomes for the students. The data that I'm going to be referencing today is not from that district. I'd like to just point out a few things that it's saying to me, and that would be very helpful also, again, from a coaching perspective to know. Recognizing the challenges of the labor intensity and time intensity of trying to manually aggregate the data necessary to get feedback on these different dashboard items was just astronomical for teachers. It just required a lot of personal time in addition to their actual work time in order to aggregate all of this information on the students. The pilot program that was run was very well received because of the opportunity for minimizing that investment of time on behalf of the teachers. To have the dashboards that are presented here, it's helpful to glance and see where your students range and what areas are necessary for improvement. If I had to provide any feedback with regard to next steps looking at this data, I would be encouraging and getting more information from the teachers with regard to those students that were not assessed and trying to get to the bottom of the reasons for them not being assessed and work to close that gap, because fortunately the data is indicating that they are meeting their age level expectation. I think it's more important to access the students that have not been assessed and really try and drill down on that so that everyone's afforded access and opportunity to utilize the tool and provide more feedback for the teacher in making adjustments to their curriculum.
Assessment data must be easy to collect and easy to use in order to guide instruction. Cognitive Toybox provides just-in-time insights to help teachers, coaches, and administrators to support kindergarten readiness. This work was supported by SBIR grants from the Institute of Education Sciences as well as the National Science Foundation.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the master class. We're going to take some time to do a Q&A with Cognitive Toybox developer Tammy Kwan and a panelist of teachers and coaches. How about we start the Q&A with a quick introduction by everyone. We just go around the room and we'll introduce with your name, the program you work for, and how long you've been teaching. So let's start with Tammy.
Oh, hi everyone, I'm the developer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cognitive Toybox. I'm really excited to be part of this panel today.
Great, thanks Tammy. Yareli?
Well, hello, my name is Yareli Kano, and I'm a preschool bilingual teacher at Marycrest Early Childhood Center, and I have been working as a ESL bilingual inclusive classroom for about 3 years.
Welcome. Olivia?
Hello, my name is Olivia Wessel. I'm actually an early childhood instructional coach, as well as a professional development facilitator and content creator. And I work for a company called Connecting the Dots in Early Childhood Education. And I've been working as an early childhood educator and instructional coach for about 7 years.
Thanks, Olivia. Sobelia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sobeja, and I work for Public Prep as a preschool teacher. And this is my 5th year of teaching.
Welcome. And Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel Varela. I'm a bilingual special education early childhood teacher. I've been in early childhood for about 15 years now, and I work with Joliet School District 86.
Wonderful. So let's open up the room and just ask Tammy what you want to know about the masterclass that you just watched. Olivia, do you want to start?
Sure. I think one question that comes to mind for me is in thinking about this model and the way that it really utilizes technology. Can you speak a little bit more in detail about how the technology and the data that's gathered can really inform in-classroom instruction and the design and intentional lesson planning for teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that question. One reason why I developed Cognitive Toybox was to enable early childhood educators to move from assessment for compliance to assessment for instructional adjustment. Along those lines, a lot of our research and development has been around building a dashboard and a navigation system that really can connect assessment to instructional adjustment in a way that teachers can understand and is easy to use. So along those lines, some of the features that we've developed include dynamic small groupings based on skills. So if a teacher is teaching a lesson, for example, next week on patterns, they could drill down into their classroom's patterns report to see which specific areas to focus on in terms of their whole group instruction. They could also look at specific individual students to see where their abilities are for patterns if they are doing individualization with those students for the week.
That's great. Thanks, Tammy. Yareli, do you have a question for Tammy?
Well, I just had one question. As a bilingual educator, do you are like thinking about having maybe providing like a resource for like families who speak another language, so that way they can use this resource available for our parents at home?
Yeah, absolutely. So our assessments are available in English and Spanish. So for children who are dual language learners, especially around areas that around, for example, if a child is a dual language learner and more comfortable in Spanish than they are with English, we actually recommend that teachers assess the math assessments in their home language in Spanish so that it's a true measure of their math abilities as opposed to something that could be confounded with their abilities in terms of English learning. In addition to that, to support dual language learners and families at home, we also do offer all of our family reports in both languages, in both English and Spanish.
That's fantastic. So Belia, do you have a question for Tammy?
Yes, I do. So considering that it takes time, for teachers to get used to different systems and different assessment tools, how long would you say that it would take, Tammy, for a teacher who's brand new to the program to like get used to the tools and how to use it? Would it be maybe like 1 day of professional development, or do you see that happening in more than 1 day of professional development?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. One challenge that I've seen firsthand in early childhood is around the teacher turnover. So the teacher turnover within especially Head Start programs and publicly funded pre-K programs is quite high. And with other more traditional, just solely observation-based assessment systems, the time to get a teacher retrained and especially to get a new teacher who doesn't have very much experience with assessment fully trained takes many weeks to as long as a year to really get them to a point where they're able to accurately assess children. What our framework enables through our combination of observation-based and game-based assessments is to reduce that teacher learning time in terms of in order for a teacher to use our tool, they just have to go through a 2-hour training and a certification process to get started. And then beyond that, we have practices and reports in place to help instructional coaches within the organization to continue to support that teacher's development, to ensure that they are able to do assessment in a way that is accurate and time efficient. But overall, compared to the industry-leading approach around just observation-based assessment, we are saving teachers 50% of their time, returning 100 hours of instructional time back to them so that they can spend that time helping to teach children.
That's exciting. Rachel, did you have a question?
Yes, so the parent component is available in English and Spanish. So my question is the curriculum and assessment piece translated, or is it culturally appropriate? For example, rhyming does not exist in Spanish. Is that still expected in Spanish because it's just translated, or has it been adapted so that it's culturally appropriate?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think we continue to do our translation work in phases. And in the first phase, it was just around a straight translation from English to Spanish. But last year, what we did when we started to support family child care providers especially was we started to do work to make sure that our tools were also culturally relevant to the families and children that we serve. So along those lines, we have done things around we have done specific things to make our tool more culturally relevant. For example, switching out vocabulary words if you're in a rural versus more urban area, ensuring that the activities that we do recommend to families at home are culturally relevant and are accessible with the tools that they have at home. That piece is a work in progress, but I completely agree that supporting folks who are dual language learners isn't just a matter of translating from English to Spanish, but also thinking about how this can fit into the broader context of their culture.
Thanks, Tammy. So let's move on to our second question. And because we're virtual, let's go in that same order. And what we'd like to do is to hear one story, a really short one, about how you as an educator have adapted your assessment strategy this year during COVID. So I'll start with Olivia and then we'll go through again.
So I'm going to give the lens of a coach's perspective because I was not directly assessing students. I was supporting teachers in figuring out how to best assess students, especially for my teachers who were supporting only remote learners. I think the biggest thing is that we came to the conclusion that we had to pivot and it had to change. Teachers in early childhood were used to observing children in their play, in their natural environment, in their interactions, and that just wasn't the same with COVID. And so what a lot of my teachers ended up doing and what we brainstormed is, yes, we could take some anecdotal notes during Zoom sessions, but that wouldn't necessarily reflect the whole authentic child, because who a child is during a Zoom session is not necessarily who they are in real life in the classroom. And so a lot of educators were really turning to families and leaning on families for their support and for them doing activities with children at home to help get some data that way and some work-based assessment that way. And I'm thinking about this model, though, and how that really would have helped to gather some accurate data for many educators.
Ureli, you want to go next?
Yes.
Thank you.
So during this pandemic, right, COVID, I feel like it's definitely was like a learning experience, for us educators, and trying to think outside the box and trying to, gather assessment, because, stuff like through Zoom is not accurate. And I think as an educator, I just kind of opened me up to like more agree with working with families, working how I can connect with families at home, and it made me kind of realize like how to gather data from them. And I think we use different forms as an educator, trying to different electronic forms, different ways of technology resources. That way that I can like communicate with families and try to gather data from their perspective, and also other technology resources. And I think the model, right, I was also a good model that I feel like could be something that we can totally utilize maybe in the future, because it's also a good assessment piece that I can gather data from my own students and also kind of combine it with what I've been utilizing this year so far and what's been working and what's not been working. So having all that resources can help, continue, getting those assessment pieces and getting that most accurate data that I can get for my students and see where they're at.
Go ahead, Sophia.
So I think this year, in general, teachers, we are, usually very flexible and adaptable people. That's just part of like the nature of the job. But I think in this last year, it has been like the boot camp of flexibility and adaptability. And when it comes to assessment in particular, I know for me, it was definitely, a bit of a transition going from the model that we used in class while we were in person, where I would be able to assess my students in a corner of my classroom, one-on-one, and, in person, taking down all of my notes, to then transition into a completely virtual model. It took a little bit of time. I know that for me, giving myself a little bit of grace, as well as, with my team members as well, and also leaning on the families. So when we were going through, because we were still expected to gather data on our students, so far we've done it twice this year, and doing it obviously is a little bit different now because kids are mostly at home. So we're able to ask parents, to set up, if possible, a space for our students to have some quiet and have some just some space to be able to do the assessment, and then having the patience as well to really, push through, because as we know, working with young children, we want to limit screen time. So taking all those things into account has definitely been a push, but it's a push that's just helped us become a little bit more flexible, a little bit more innovative. And I know that if we were to use the model by Tammy, it would really help us in gathering information as well.
And for my classroom, what has been the most challenging is helping parents to understand the expectations. So we've been doing a lot of videos of recording activities and trying to show them this is different ways you can differentiate the activity. These are the different levels that maybe your child may be at. Here's ways that you can use these materials at home to do this certain activity, and really trying to beef up that parent education piece, because often they don't understand the questions that we're asking, or the information that they're sending us isn't necessarily the data that we need in order to inform our instruction. Not that parents aren't trying to be helpful, they just don't have the same background to be able to give us the different levels that we're looking for. So with this model, I think it was very helpful to have that piece where the child is doing their game, and then boom, it shows the parent, this is where your child is, and here's the next level, this is exactly what you can do. I think that would be very helpful for the parent as well as the teacher, because you can see what they're doing at home based on their performance, and the parents can see exactly what the suggestions are based on their child's performance.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone on the panel. I think we have just enough time for maybe one or two more questions for Tammy. If anyone has anything else that they'd like to ask her while we have her here with us, I'm happy to open it up before we close up the Q&A.
I know that your program has the piece for the teachers and then the piece for the parents. Is it able to get that separated so that if a school district already has a curriculum that they are using, that the teachers aren't able to implement another one, but they would like to implement that parent piece? Is that an option for them?
Thank you for that question. Yes, that is an option for them. And one thing that this pandemic really pushed us to do was to be more family and parent centric. So before the pandemic, our tool was used solely by teachers in the classroom, and it helped them to, they were using that as a tool to gather data on children's development and then helping to enhance interactions with that data outside of the tool. With the pandemic, we found that there is a greater need now than ever for families at home and teachers to collaborate to support the development of children, both at home and also within a school setting. And along those lines, when we were adapting our product to support remote and hybrid learning, we built it in a way so that it was flexible, so that we could turn on and off different pieces depending on program need. And so that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, we can just offer the parent piece without the teacher piece.
So anyone else that has a question before we close up this Q&A? Olivia?
I had just one follow-up question to that, and I was wondering, I know there's teacher modules to help get them trained up on how to use Kognitive. Are there any specific modules available for families?
Yes, we are actually developing modules for families as well. One area of active development for us is trying to understand how we can use our assessment games at home with fidelity, because families at home aren't trained as teachers are in terms of how to collect assessment data. We may need to build in additional professional development tools, as well as mechanisms within our tool to understand when there are instances where families may be supporting their child and guiding them to the right answer, or if it's an older sibling who's conducting that assessment. So that's an area of further research that we are doing right now in terms of understanding how to extend the assessments to the home environment and ensure that we are still gathering data in a way that is accurate and representative of a child's development, so that families and teachers can then act on that information to help support that child's development and to ultimately enable them to thrive.
Great. Thank you. Before I close out, Tammy, is there anything else that you want to leave us with before we finish today?
I just want to say thank you to the teachers and coaches for all of your work this past year. I mean, I'm just one person, but I think your work, and especially the stories that you have shared today, have really showcased how innovative you have had to be in this past year. And I really appreciate the work you are doing, and I really appreciate your feedback on our work today.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy, and our panelists for today. We appreciate your time and all the hard work and service that you've been providing for our children during this time and in the future. So thank you.